We're coming to you from the roof of CNN in the nation's capital, where in just 3 days we will witness the peaceful transition of power as Donald J. Trump is sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. And as the election itself was unprecedented, so too will be this inaugural. Pomp will mix with protest as Trump prepares to govern in what Frontline calls the divided states of America. A new poll finds Trump has an approval rating of just 40%. That's the worst showing of any president-elect in modern history, and a full 44 points below where President Obama stood as he took the oath of office 8 years ago.
I think you can assume that it is because he seems to want to engage with every windmill that he can find, rather than focus on the large aspect of assuming the most important position on earth. And obviously, apparently, according to polls, many Americans are not happy with that approach when he has not even assumed the presidency.
And on cue, Trump responded to the new CNN poll on Twitter. Quote, the same people who did the phony election polls and were so wrong are now doing approval rating polls. They are rigged just like before. And then there's growing backlash over his tweets about Georgia Congressman and civil rights icon John Lewis, who called Trump an illegitimate president. Trump responded that Lewis's district was a mess and that he hadn't done enough to improve it. More than 4 dozen Democratic legislators are now saying they will boycott the inaugural. Joining me now is Matt Viser. Matt covered the campaign for the Boston Globe, and he is now, let me get it right, the Deputy Washington Bureau Chief. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
It's great to see you, Matt. Thanks so much for being here. You're freezing or no?
No.
Yes, you are. It's okay. So we have 4 dozen Democrats boycotting. We have questions of legitimacy raised by John Lewis and others. But it seems to me most importantly, this 40% rating, this real low level. Does this mean anything? Do these things mean anything when it comes to governing?
It does. And Trump has oftentimes acted like it doesn't. I mean, he's good at sort of pretending like those numbers don't matter. But 40%, and this is after a transition process that is like a fat pitch down the middle to, improving those kind of numbers. Obama had 80% on how he handled his transition. So I think it puts him at a real deficit starting out.
Well, especially it seems to me, my sense is, and I'm not here, that it would embolden the GOP. This notion is there's some kind of love fest. But whether it's Medicare, the replacement issue, a whole host of things, some of the Republican leaders are at odds with Trump already on solutions, are they not?
Even his own cabinet is at odds with him. Mm-hmm. It was striking throughout the past week in seeing the confirmation hearings how off-key some of his nominees were from his own position. So it's really setting it up for a lot of conflict at the beginning of the administration.
Well, speaking of conflict, obviously the number one agenda item, and they appear, at least the repeal portion, to be in some level of unity, I guess, is the Obamacare thing. But then the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office this morning says, 32 million people uninsured in 10 years. And they go on to say, and premiums will double. Well, what I would say if I was in Arizona is my premiums doubled already. Yeah. So how much worse can it get if this thing is gone? Does that make that compelling a case?
Well, not only that, but Trump talking about wanting to insure everybody, as he did over the weekend with an interview with the Washington Post. So Trump is a little bit off message from Hill, Republicans on Capitol Hill, who want to put the emphasis on lowering premiums, where Trump is putting the emphasis on health care for all, which the current law does a pretty good job at doing.
But they can cover everybody if they just allow people, if they don't have a floor for the kind of policy you get. They raise deductibles, they lower the number of good things that have to be in a policy, and they can cover everybody for less money.
But they don't want to get rid of the good things. I mean, that's one of the keys of they're highlighting Trump, and other Republicans are highlighting.
Like keeping your kid on through 26, the no pre-existing ban
right.
thing.
So those they want sort of the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff, and that's kind of hard to do in one bill.
Voodoo economics, somebody called it one time. I think it was. The thing that I'm obsessed with is this back and forth with the intelligence community that culminated, at least so far, with the current CIA guy saying that Trump's comments about comparing the intelligence people in these leaks to Nazis was, quote, repugnant. It seems to me when you put intelligence in quotes, you make those kind of Nazi comments, that there's some careerists within the CIA and the intelligence community who are saying, okay, we'll do our job, but when the right time comes, we're going to get this guy. I mean, is that an unfair characterization?
No, I mean, Chuck Schumer said a week or two ago that the community that you don't want to be at war with is the intelligence community, because they have a lot of information that they can use. And, you know, we're seeing a little bit of that now where Trump is responding to innuendo and things like that, which is partly the news media has fueled that, but partly, you know, the intelligence community had that in briefings that sort of opened up a discussion over what was in some of those allegations.
Speaking of news media, do you take heat? Well, you wrote a piece, I don't know, 10 days ago about Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State nominee, and I think it was a pretty favorable piece saying that he was a pragmatist when he was the head of the Boy Scouts and was trying to negotiate this deal about gay scouts, that sort of thing. Do you take heat when at least obviously from one faction, when you say even something remotely positive about somebody connected to Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this mood out there of you know, wanting to view all of Trump and all of his nominees and people surrounding him in the most negative light possible. I think each person is more textured. That doesn't mean that Rex Tillerson's ties to Russia should be overlooked, and they haven't been, and they're explored in depth. But there are other aspects about these people in their lives that I think put them in a little bit fuller of a context of you know, sort of their qualifications and their own backgrounds and how they're coming at this job and how they're looking at what they're going to do.
You know, staying at the press for a second, you know, on one hand you have Vladimir Putin saying that people like you are worse than prostitutes, which I'm sure you take in the nicest way. But interestingly, the CNN poll, which shocked me this morning, the same 40% poll, the public is more upset with how Trump treats the media than how the media treats Trump. Does that not surprise you?
It does. I mean, the media's numbers are, you know, hard
Used
to get.
car
They're much better.
Stuff,
yeah,
right.
I mean, it's terrible. And so I think Trump's demonizing of the press is kind of helping in a way. And I think there is a mood out there for, you know, there's a lot of talk about fake news, but there is an appetite for fact-based journalism or attempts to be fact-based, you know, and so I think that that's creating some of that atmosphere.
We all know about the march on the Women's March on Saturday, which will be broader than women apparently. What's the protest story? What are we to expect as this week moves along, leading into noon on Friday?
I think the crowds are going to be very interesting. I mean, on the Mall, you will have sort of two Americas almost over 2 days. You know, you will have Trump supporters here, and maybe in fewer numbers than protesters. If you look at the bus permits that have been applied for the city of D.C., there's more buses carrying protesters than there are buses carrying supporters. So I think that mood will be very interesting to watch, and how Trump responds to, you know, potential protests at his own inauguration.
You know, people like your reporting, but obviously your political reporting is not nearly as good as your coffee reporting. So I'm in Washington for a week. Double Shot is your deal. What's the best coffee in Washington? Where do I get it?
Well, the best coffee, in my opinion, is Slipstream. It's sort of near Logan Circle in D.C. They have a wide variety. They even have coffee cocktails at night. They've got a lot of coffee options. A coffee flight with different, you know, wine tastings. You think of it, coffee tastings with the coffee flight.
Notice the biggest smile I got from him the whole time. Matt Viser, it's great to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.